Alright, let me tell you something that might mess with your head a little. See, most people study in a way that feels productive, but is actually wasting their time entirely. And the worst part is, they don't even know it. Because from the outside, it looks like they're doing all the right things. You know, they're reading, they're taking notes, they're highlighting stuff again and again, they're watching lectures. And I used to be the same guy, you know, until I realized that studying doesn't mean learning more. In fact, I figured out that you can rewire just 3 things in the way that you learn, and you can actually study less and learn faster because of that. Not as a gimmick, but like actually retain stuff deeper and longer with less burnout. Now look, I have a master's degree in mechanical engineering and I graduated at the very top of my class. My GPA was 4.4, almost all A pluses, even in the most brutal courses. And this wasn't because I studied all day or that I pulled all-nighters every week. It was actually the opposite. I was working part-time, I had other responsibilities. I didn't want to spend every second of my life with textbooks. And so I had to figure out how to learn better, not just harder. And that is what this video is about, because I noticed something really weird. I was spending less time studying than most of the people around me, but I was actually learning faster and I was retaining more information and getting better results as well. And no, I'm not some genius. I just started doing very few specific things that completely changed how my brain processed information. And I call this the brain code framework. Not because I'm trying to sound cool, but because it genuinely felt like I had unlocked a secret code in how my brain works. And it actually has 3 parts. Number 1 is cognitive ownership. Number 2 is fractal struggle theory. And number 3 is compression recall. Now, if none of these make sense yet, that's perfect, because they're about to change the way you think about studying altogether. So let's start with the first one. Cognitive ownership. So there was this one week back in university, I had like 3 midterms, 2 labs, 1 assignment, and my brain was just fried, like properly fried. And I remember I was sitting there with this one topic, thermodynamics, which already sounds like something that you'd need a PhD to survive. And no matter how many times I read it, it just wouldn't click. I watched the lecture twice, I highlighted the entire page, I rewrote the formulas again and again. Literally rewrote them word for word, hoping that maybe magically it would stick, but it didn't, right? And it honestly felt like I was pouring water into a glass with a crack, right? Like I was doing everything right, but then none of it stayed. And then it hit me. I wasn't learning, I was actually just copying. I was just reconsuming the same thing over and over again, hoping that it would magically settle into my brain. And that is when I figured out this thing called cognitive ownership. Basically, if you're not actively building the idea in your own head, it's not yours, right? Like the brain hasn't earned it yet. It's just borrowing someone else's explanation. A real learning happens when you take the mess, the words, the formulas, the graphs, and you try to rebuild it in your own language, in your own structure, your own messy little brain map. Instead of just reading the material again, I closed the notebook, I literally shut it. And I asked myself, all right, can I explain this without looking? Like I'm talking to somebody, not a professor, just somebody who has no clue what I'm talking about. Like a younger brother or like a younger cousin or even myself from a week ago, right? And the first time that I did that, I froze, like I fully blanked out. I was like, okay, heat goes somewhere. I had no idea what I was saying. But that moment where my brain struggled, that is where the real learning started. Because now I knew what I didn't know. I could fill the gap. So I opened the notes again, I found exactly what I was missing. And this time I didn't just copy. I rewrote it in my own words, dumb words, simple stuff. Sometimes I use a weird analogy, like I turn entropy into the universe getting messier over time. And weirdly, it worked, like way better than anything else that I was doing, right? And I know that it feels slower. It is slower actually, right? But that is just in the beginning, because I'm telling you, it saves you so much time later down the line. Because when you're actually rebuilding the concept in your own words, right? With your own structure, your own dumb metaphors, it sticks. It doesn't leave your brain for a very long period of time. All right, so once I figured out that copying just wasn't working, like once I started to actually try and own what I was learning, there was still this one habit that I couldn't really shake. I still kept waiting until the end of studying something to test myself. You know what I mean? Like, I'd go through a whole lecture, all the readings, all the examples, and then I'd feel like, okay, now I'm allowed to try some practice questions. And now I can open up a past paper. And now I'm ready. Except I wasn't. Half the time I'd open a paper and realize that I didn't understand a single thing. And that panic, like that oh no moment right before the exam, I was feeling that during practice. But it was too late, right? And so this is where the second part comes in. And honestly, it changed the entire game for me. It's called the fractal struggle theory. Now, it sounds very intense, but it's actually pretty simple stuff. It's the idea that the faster you start struggling with something, with like a topic, for example, right? Like actually letting yourself fail at it, the faster you will learn. Because here's what most people do, right? They wait until they feel ready to try past papers or to try quizzes or even flashcards. They keep telling themselves that, let me review this a bit more first. Let me go through the lecture again. And then at the end, I will try and test myself. And that used to be me too, right? But now, as soon as I study a little bit, I immediately test myself by removing a past paper or by asking AI to give me a bunch of questions on a particular topic. Because if I don't test myself until the end and I mess up, now I gotta go back and relearn the entire foundation again, right? But if I let myself struggle a little bit in the beginning, at the start, I can catch myself early on, right? If I fail at something. It's like checking the map at the first wrong turn instead of waiting until you're completely lost. And look, I get it. It feels uncomfortable, right? Like the first few times I did this, I genuinely thought that I was dumb, right? Because I tried a past paper and I realized that I didn't know most of the questions in there. And I was like, why can't I explain this? I just literally read it, right? But that is the point. That's the struggle that your brain actually needs to grow. And the reason that I call it fractal is because it's not one big struggle session. It's tiny, repeated struggles spaced out through the process. It's like doing short mental workouts instead of trying to run a marathon the night before the test. Little fails often, that's the whole idea. Right? And honestly, once I started doing this, everything just got lighter. Like I didn't feel that giant pressure building up anymore, right? I was failing early and I was fixing early as well as a result of that and moving on, right? It felt like I was actually finally working with my brain and not against it. All right, so now the last piece of the puzzle. And this one ties it all together and it's called compression recall. Okay, so by now, I've gotten better at learning. I was learning in a better way, right? I was owning my ideas by explaining to myself or somebody else in a more simple language. I was testing myself earlier as well, right? With a struggle. And yes, all of this made a huge difference, right? But still, there was something that felt off. Something was still missing. Like even when I understood something, sometimes I still couldn't recall it when I needed it. Especially when someone asked me a quick question, right? Or when I had to explain something in 30 seconds during an exam. And my brain had it, but it was just buried under 5 layers of explanation, right? It was there, just too big and too scattered in my brain. And then I discovered something that completely transformed my entire learning approach. And I can't remember the book that I was reading, but I came across this concept called compression cycle. And it's basically where you try and take everything that you've learned about a topic and you shrink it down. Like you literally compress it. Just squeeze it into a few lines, right? Like a headline. Something tiny that still made sense. Like instead of thermodynamics, blah, 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 I'd say energy moves from ordered to messy unless we stop it. Boom, right? That's entropy, right? A clean, small, and mine. Right? And I realized that if I couldn't compress the idea into a smaller chunk, I didn't really understand it at all, right? Not deeply at least. And so I started doing this every time that I studied. After I went through a topic, after I struggled, after I tested myself, I'd ask one more thing. Can I say this in one sentence? And if not, then I'd keep shrinking it. I'd boil it down again and again until it fit in my head like a little mental cheat code, right? And weirdly, it made me recall things instantly. Like I didn't have to think about it anymore. I just reached into my head and there it was, right? A clean, compressed version of a giant topic that used to take me hours to explain. And that is when I started to realize that this isn't just understanding. This is something deeper. A compression recall. It's the final stage, the cherry on top, right? You've built it, you've tested it, now you simplify it to the point where you walk into a room, drop a one-liner, and still be right. And it's kind of addicting actually, right? Because you go from, I think I get it, to, yeah, I got this locked in, right? And most people never get there. They just stop understanding. But if you can't explain it fast, clearly, and simply, then you don't own it yet fully. A compression recall is like the final polish, right? The part that makes it click forever. So yeah, most people think that learning faster means cutting corners or finding hacks. But honestly, it's not about that at all. It's not about hacks. It's about getting your brain to work with you instead of against you, right? And that is what the brain code framework really is. It's just a better operating system of how you process information, right? You've got cognitive overload where you stop being a copy machine, right? And actually build a concept in your own mind by explaining it to somebody in simple words or by writing it down on a book, right? And then you've got fractal struggle theory where you stop avoiding the hard parts and you go straight into testing yourself with past papers or questions instead of waiting till the end to do that. And finally, you've got compression recall where you shrink the concepts into smaller chunks until it clicks instantly. This changed everything that I learned. Engineering concepts, software tools, even random hobbies like archery. I'm not smarter than anyone else. I just finally stopped pretending that more effort means more results. I started learning smarter, not harder. And once that clicked, everything got easier. Anyway, if you want a cheat sheet or a breakdown of how to actually use this week by week, let me know in the comments below. I've actually made some tools that I can send you guys for free. But yeah guys, that is how I learn faster now. And honestly, I'll never go back. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.